First up, election season. Next week is the Shelby County general election and primaries for state and federal offices. And voters seem to be shrugging their shoulders based on early voting numbers. While in the much more exciting presidential race, two Tennessee congressmen making headlines for their reactions to Kamala Harris as the presumptive Democratic nominee. Also today, we'll take a closer look at the controversy surrounding Elon Musk's XAI supercomputer, a project moving so fast, training has already started at the facility in southwest Memphis. Some critics say it's moving too fast and that the public is being left out of the conversation. I'll ask my panel what they think about that. And finally, the city of Memphis has hired a former NYPD cop to work as a consultant in helping the Bluff City make a dent in its crime problem. But he has a record from his time in New York that have some questioning whether he's the best consultant for the job. We'll look into all of that in a moment, but first I want to introduce you to my panel today. Otis Sanford is ABC24's political analyst. Sam Hardman is a reporter with the Daily Memphian, and Deidre Malone is a political consultant and CEO and founder of the Carter Malone Group. Let's talk about the election first, the county election first. Otis, voting will be Thursday in the August 1st election. The early voting numbers, though, show maybe half of what showed up to the polls 4 years ago. We're looking at right around 30,000. How do you interpret that and what it means for the races that are the ones we're following anyway?
Yeah, I think two things. I think that was just overall disinterest in this election. There's only one real major seat that's up for grabs in that general election, and that's the General Sessions Court clerk's race. The only other thing of really significance is the school board and their district races, so there's not a lot of general support behind that. But the second thing is, I just think people are now, they're keeping their powder dry and getting ready for November. Now, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but boy, the enthusiasm for November now is just totally overtaken August, and everybody's thinking about that. They're not thinking about next week, and which I think the turnout is probably going to be around 10 or 12%.
So you look at how people interpret the early voting numbers and which precincts are showing up, are seeing the most people show up and which ones aren't, even though people can vote in any precinct they want to in early voting. But you have, in the General Sessions Court clerk race, you have Tammy Sawyer, who a lot of people know from her time as a commissioner. She's an activist who helped get those statues torn down. And Lisa Arnold, who's spent decades working in the clerk's office under Republicans and Democrats and feels like, well, I've got the experience. How do you think this shakes out based on what you see about the early voting, assuming we have very low turnout? How do you think that shakes out?
You know, I'm tough to hazard a guess here. I mean, any Republican has an uphill battle in Shelby County, right? It's just, you know, there have been a lot of choice mailers, let's say, that, you know, have been mailed out about Sawyer for clerk, you know, Tammy Sawyer. And so that's, you know, is that type of tactic, is that going to be effective in driving turnout in such a election? If you drive any sort of a base, right? If you get any type of people excited, that's probably good, right? For your chances. But at the same time, like, I'm sorry, I can't really handicap a clerk's race. Like,
not when you're used to handicapping, is it?
No, I'm sorry.
Well, the thing is, we have so many clerks, and we've talked about this on this show. Too many clerks. They probably shouldn't be elected positions at all, but that's just the way it is. That's how the cards have been dealt. And I just wonder, we've been talking so much about the Shelby County clerk, Wanda Halbert, and all of her shenanigans. I wonder, do you think that plays into what people decide? Does that help Lisa Arnold at all in this race?
Well, I think that's what the GOP hopes, because their direct mail piece basically stated it. I've seen it.
She would be a disaster.
Yeah,
I think she would be a
trying
disaster.
to tie, you know, Tammy Sawyer to Wanda Halbert, which I think is a mistake. They also, Lisa Arnold also has a TV spot. And it starts with that, with Tammy Sawyer, and, you know, and then moves into why she should be the clerk. I think Tammy has done a great job of mobilizing elected officials, specifically Democratic elected officials, to come to her defense. I know the NAACP basically said, hey, you know, just run a clean race and stop all of this negativity. I know the Shelby County Democratic Party has come out in support of Tammy Sawyer. So you have groups coming out saying, hey, don't go negative, just run your race. But they're coming out to support Tammy Sawyer.
And to the point that you asked Sam, Democrats are outnumbering Republicans in picking up a ballot. Now, again, that's the primary ballot. As of Thursday, 8,000 more Democrats were voting than Republicans. Now, the clerk's race is a general election, and Arnold may get some crossover, But the question is it going to be enough to offset that huge Democratic advantage in numbers? I'm just not quite sure it is.
It's just math, right?
It's
Like,
math.
it's just math.
Right.
It's not like unless you can get like outsized turnout in some precincts that would be responsive to that type of ads, right? Like that's what you're fighting for, right?
You're absolutely right. And
Right.
Tammy's on every Democratic ballot.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Every
She is.
ballot.
Absolutely.
She's on it.
Absolutely.
So we'll see how that all shakes out. Now let's go to a race that's a lot more interesting, and that is the presidential race, which has just been on
think?
fire this last several days. And you got to leave it to some Tennessee congressmen to make sure that they inject themselves and get as much publicity as they can for comments they've made once Kamala became the presumptive nominee. Let's start with Andy Ogles, congressman from the 5th District of Tennessee. He has already filed articles of impeachment against Kamala Harris. He said that she had willful refusal to uphold immigration laws, that she concealed President Biden's well-being, or I guess lack of well-being as the case may be, and they called on her to invoke the 25th Amendment as well. I'll let you take this one first.
So
Deidre.
let me ask the question. I think that the Democrats did have a plan for immigration and specifically for the wall. And then Republicans decided, they did not want to vote on it because they knew it was an election year and it would help the Biden administration. So shame on them. To call her a DEI vice president is the most insulting and repulsive thing that you would ever want to hear. This woman is a former prosecutor. She was the state attorney general for California. She's the vice president of the United States. President Biden had an opportunity to select anyone, and he selected her because of her qualifications.
Well, the line that he made that it keeps coming back to haunt him on this is that he said he was going to hire a black woman or choose a black woman to be the VP. But your point is well taken. You're talking about Congressman Tim Burchett, also
Yes.
of Tennessee, who his quote was to CNN, 100% she is a DEI hire. Her record is abysmal at best.
And what's his? That's my question. What has he done?
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have this congressman who just can't seem to help themselves but to get involved in the national conversation and make waves by introducing legislation in the case of Ogles, making comments in the case of Burchett. Well, why can't, I think it only hurts the party. If they're trying to go for a win here, don't make comments like that.
I mean, I don't know on that front. I think like there's an aspect of firing up the base, right? It's and who is turned on by that, I don't know.
Well, he
Who
said
likes that
activists may not like what I had to say, but my home district liked what I had to say.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Like, I think people are pretty, Anyway, beyond that, I mean, just the idea that how casually impeachment gets thrown out these days, right? Mm-hmm. How casually government officials talk about impeachment. Like, that's something, like, to me, like, when I was looking at those comments, I was like, this is just kind of a further sign of, like, these things that were built as safeguards that were really never, like, it's, break the glass in case of emergency. The glass seems broken and they're just using the tool now. And it's just become a political tool. And I think that, to me, is more of what I read into here. I mean, comments are, can be repugnant, but just really the acts of, like, the willingness to do this is interesting. And it's really getting pretty weird.
Yeah, I mean, a politician's record, I think we all agree, is fair game, Otis. But the DEI hire remark, first of all, I objected more to the hire line.
Yeah.
She wasn't, the people who hired her were the voters. Whether it be the state of California.
Yeah,
where
about 80-something million.
80-something million?
You're right, exactly. It was disgusting, as Deidre said. It was racist.
Yeah.
And even the Speaker of the House said, let's not go down this road. Let's attack on issues. This is not about Kamala Harris personally. This is about the issues. I'm glad he said that. But the overall issue here around diversity, equity, and inclusion should be a part of this campaign. And as someone who used to be in charge of hiring at our former position, what is wrong with trying to make your workforce look like the community that you serve?
This country.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden was saying, he first said, I'm going to look for a woman. Well, what's wrong with that? He didn't say black woman at the very beginning. He ended up with Kamala Harris because she was the best qualified. And there's nothing wrong with diversity, equity, and inclusion because it brings everybody into the table. And what Burchett is saying, and I said this in a column, he wants to go back to the days of white men first, and that's just a fact.
Well, you look at you go through history, and you look at all the presidents and all the vice presidents since George Washington. Post that, there isn't a lot else there other than white men.
Exactly. And
the notion that you might have one, black woman in there is interesting.
And let's just be clear, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to offend some people. DEI for some is the buzzword for the N-word.
Yes,
Let's
it
just
is.
call it
Yes,
what
it
it
is.
is.
Yes, it is.
You know,
Yes, it
rather
is.
than saying the N-word, they're saying DEI.
Exactly.
And they ought to be ashamed of
In
themselves.
fact, they were saying woke before
Exactly.
that. Like they were saying, let's get rid of critical race theory
Exactly.
before that. They were attacking affirmative action before that.
You're right,
I mean,
Ernest.
there's always something to come along that conservatives, in this case, can use to weaponize and turn things into a racial division.
Well, at least as you said, several Republican leaders, including the Speaker of the House, have said we need to go a different way.
Exactly.
This
We did.
kind of conversation
And good for
needs
them.
to stop.
And good for them.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the XAI supercomputer project. I always have trouble getting that. It just doesn't flow off my tongue very well. And the whole thing that Elon Musk is behind. And is the community moving too fast in getting this thing online? We'll be right back.